everybody. Welcome to Featured Teachers, a webinar series brought to you by the American TESOL Institute and hosted by yours truly, Fluency MC, also known as Jason Levine, or vice versa. I'm here today with Kate from English Anywhere. She's our featured teacher for the month of March 2021. Really glad you're with us, Kate. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be here, Jason.
It is our honor and pleasure to have you here. So, Kate, where are you from? Where do you live? Is it the same place or is it a different place? And can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about you.
Yeah. So, hello, everybody. My name is Kate, and I'm from Canada. I now currently live in Germany, but I have taught as well all over the place and lived all over the world. I've been teaching English for the last 13 years, started with elementary school students, and then I was teaching adults. Then I was teaching high school girls, and after that moved to adults when I moved here to Germany. And I've been teaching adults ever since. Here in Germany, I actually can't teach young children unless I get certified by the German system.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. I love teaching adults. I'm super happy with what I'm doing. And yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell.
Great. So you mentioned that you can't teach young learners at this point in Germany, but you enjoy teaching adults. Was that a career change because of that, or were you also interested in teaching adults? And do you miss teaching kids? And
well, it's funny because I actually started the ESL journey simply because I wanted to continue to travel. So as I said earlier, I grew up all over the world. My dad was working for the embassy when I was a child. So we were in Japan, we were in Kuwait, we were in the States. And then I knew that I wanted to continue to travel and that teaching English was a really great opportunity for that.
Mm-hmm.
As a Canadian, you can go quite easily to Japan and to Korea. Those are quite high paying jobs. There's lots of travel time. So those were my two biggest options. And I just kind of realized I didn't want to go to Japan because I had already lived there.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself went to Korea. So I started my ESL journey going to Korea just for the sake of the travel. And then my first year there, I was teaching young kids in an elementary school. I had 800 kids.
Wow.
Yes.
And how many at a time? We could have a whole discussion just about that.
36 to 40.
So you had a lot of groups.
A lot of groups.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very big school in a really small town, surprisingly, like that we would have that many kids.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, funny story. So when I moved out to Korea, I was the first teacher that was in that school for about a year and a half. So the first day when I landed, I walked into the big open area where all of the kids were playing. And there was like this moment where they kind of realized I was there and everyone started running towards me and then
swarm.
More. And I felt like Angelina Jolie in like, some far off country, this wonderful moment with all of these kids. It really was overwhelming. But it was lovely. I just didn't necessarily so I wasn't in control of the classroom. There was an English teacher and I was the teaching assistant, if you will.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I had my own desk. I had certain elements that were okay, but I didn't like the fact that I was just basically there to show them what my accent would be like.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the year, I really felt like I had done enough with the textbook and I didn't want to have to do that textbook again. And I knew that if I stayed in any elementary school that I would have to do that textbook again.
It's interesting though, because you said you got into it more for traveling. You weren't, trained as an English teacher first, but your reaction to the experience sounds more like an English teacher's reaction. So along the way, did you get more into the teaching side?
Oh, totally.
Okay,
I mean, when I decided that I wanted to move to Korea, I got my TESOL certificate, my 60-hour TESOL certificate.
Okay. So you didn't just walk into a school. Okay.
Correct. I was mildly trained, but I do think that even then there's a lot that you're not really prepared for. but I mean, it was wonderful. So I really did enjoy teaching those young kids, but I also knew for me that textbook wasn't really going to be enough.
Mhm.
It was a lot of like, I like chicken. Do you like chicken?
Right.
Yes, I like chicken. And the next kid, and then the next kid. So for me, that was not necessarily something I wanted to do again. So I got a job working for City Hall.
Mhm.
In the mornings, I was teaching adults in conversation groups. And then in the evenings, or in the afternoons, I was teaching young children, so age 2 and 3. And I would just basically be playing on the floor with them and coloring with them. And that was wonderful and lovely. And I had a lot more creativity in my lessons.
Okay.
100%, I would have stayed in that job again. I would have gone for another contract. But when the contract was almost up, I was actually offered one of the best jobs in the city at the time at their biggest girls' high school, which is like a boarding school. There was 1,400 kids.
Okay.
And they slept at the school, so they had their own little dormitory. They were in school from Monday until Saturday evening. They had the one day off on the Sunday, and even then they were expected to be, in piano lessons and math lessons and all of that.
Intense.
It was very intense, and exam time was even more so intense. And I also loved that job. Again, I was able to be creative. I was able to, think to myself, what was it that inspired the students to want to learn English? And once I had kind of that under my belt, when I knew what it was that inspired them, then the teaching became a lot more fun.
So in a very short period of time, you had students ranging in age from 2 to high school.
Yes.
Cool. So you got, and then let's fast forward a bit to, I don't know, when did you really begin to think this is what I want to do with my life, my career? Or was it at that point, or were you still thinking, okay, I'm traveling and teaching?
For sure. Yeah, I would say even in the first year, I knew I wanted to continue to teach.
Okay.
I just knew for me that I didn't want to be teaching the elementary, which actually was a surprise because I love kids and I've always loved kids. For me, it was just the one textbook that was the problem.
Yeah, right. And then you got these other jobs, and it sort of went that direction.
Exactly. So in and around the third year, I actually met my boyfriend, who was a German engineer in the area at the time. And then he was finishing a contract and asked me to move back to Germany with him, which was what brought me here to Germany.
And so how long have you been in Germany?
8 years now.
Okay, so you went from Korea to Germany. Interesting. And then a question I threw out there, but it was very quick, but it got sort of lost there. Sorry about that. Is just, do you regret now that you're not teaching kids? Are you going to try to teach kids again? Meaning high school, maybe not necessarily elementary, or are you where you want to be now as an English teacher?
I think I'm where I want to be. So, so when we moved here, I quickly thought about whether or not I could go get my certification as an early childhood educator. I know for sure that people are looking for English teachers here. And I had thought about it, but I needed, I think it was 2 or 3 years worth of education at that point. And I didn't think it was quite right at the very beginning. So I started teaching. We were living in Dortmund at the time, and I started teaching at an institute there that is run by the government program. So here, if someone is without a job for long enough, they're sent to these centers where they can update their skills. They can get computer skills, and then part of that is also English skills, so that they can make their resume look better, and that they can hopefully then find a job sooner and faster. So I was teaching a lot of people who'd been unemployed for a while, and then as soon as they got a job, they were gone, and we wouldn't see them again. And honestly, I loved that. I really enjoyed working with adults. I think for me, the best part was seeing them every day and really building up.
Yeah, and then I guess you get a sense of their achievement when they can, quickly. It's probably hard when they leave, but it's also
well, they're such a mixed emotion because you get them to the place where they got the job,
right? Yeah.
It's like, well, then goodbye.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. You can really see results. Tangible results like that when you're as a teacher.
Actually, it's there where I kind of came up with my concept of teaching. So I think we were there for about 2 years. And then I was about 7 months pregnant with my first child when my husband, who was before my boyfriend, now became my husband, and I moved to his hometown. So I ended up having to leave that job. And in this region here, most English teachers are freelancers.
Mm-hmm.
So I started a website just to get local clients. I got a couple jobs in some very big companies here in this region. So for anybody who knows Europe, if you know S. Oliver is like, I want to say the H&M of Europe, but H&M is also European. But S. Oliver is a very big clothing company. It's based here out of Würzburg, and I was teaching there for a little while. I was teaching at Koenig & Bauer, is the world's biggest or second biggest printing company. I was teaching at some medical facilities as well. So I just had this website. People could hire me. I come in, teach their people 1 day per week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit less than what I was doing in Dortmund, but it was longer term. So I would stay with them. The one company that I'm currently at now, I've been there for 3 years, teaching every day or once a week, every week for 3 years. But at least we get to stay with them. Now, sorry. As I was trying to get to, so with this then, I also realized that teaching English, when someone wants to learn English, obviously, the more English in the shorter amount of time, the better. So any sort of fluent or what's the word I'm looking for? Immersion schools are obviously better for the students than only 1 hour per week or 1 hour per day. However, I kind of realized when I was working with the people in Dortmund that we could really build up very, very quickly if we did 4 things every time we met.
Okay, can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, and this I've continued on. This is something that I tell my clients even now when I go in and meet them. Because a lot of my clients will be, for example, your age, Jason, they're professionals, they're being promoted or they're moving into another position and now they need English. And, I don't want homework. I don't want to have to sit down and write, I played, you played, we played, she played over and over again until I remember this. So for me, my big theory is that if we do all 4 connections every single time we meet, or at least every single week, then we don't have to do homework. I don't have to ask you to sit down on a Wednesday evening before we meet on the Thursday afternoon. So the way I see it is that building up a second language if you imagine your head as like a ball with 4 strings coming out of it. Okay, there are 4 different connections. So the first connection is to the I. For example, you can learn English or German or Greek 13 years ago, but if you then see that language after kind of no practice, you still recognize certain things. You can still make out some words. You can still understand maybe 30, 40, 60, 70% of what is being written there. That skill never really goes away. Once
written. I just want to clarify. You mean the written language?
Just reading. Just reading.
Okay.
So just reading, you can kind of once you build up that skill, it doesn't really disappear. Same thing for listening. So that's the second connection from your ball. That's the second connection is to your ear. So for example, if you've learned English 5-6 years ago, you hear some English on the radio, you kind of know what they're talking about. Maybe you don't know every single word. Maybe you don't know every single idea of what they're saying, but you understand if they're talking about politics in America or if they're talking about the weather or if they're talking about, right? You kind of get it. Now, the third connection is from the brain to the mouth. So that's speaking. And that one, unfortunately, breaks really, really easily. So if you go 2 weeks without speaking English, this connection weakens. Okay. So for me, in order to keep all of these things going, you have to speak English. You can't just read or just listen, but you have to read and listen and speak something, not just I like chicken, but how was your day? What are you working on? Actually getting them to produce something. Now, the fourth connection is to the hand, is to writing. If we do all 4 of these things every single week, then I don't ask my clients to do homework outside of class.
Mhm.
If we can read English even just on the board, or have an article, if we can listen to English like we're doing right now, anyone who's here with us today is listening to you and I speak, but then also speak English, and then finally write English.
Mhm.
So we make a very conscientious decision to do all four of those things every week. And then I'll tell my clients, because they are professionals, there are going to be times when they can't make it to every single meeting. Say, okay, but then don't go an entire 2 weeks without talking.
Mm.
Have to speak English at some point in there in order to get and keep all of those connections going.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right?
So do you? It's very interesting. The speaking connection you said breaks so easily.
Mhm.
You're also saying that it is the key to tying everything else together.
Yeah.
Why do you? Mhm.
So I've learned over the course of my life, I've learned 5 different second languages.
Mhm.
Now, I am not a polyglot. I am no longer good at these languages. Okay. I need German, so I am focused primarily on German. But when I lived in Japan, I was learning Japanese as a foreign language. I knew one of their 3 alphabets. They have 3 alphabets: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. And I learned hiragana, the easiest one. So after we left Japan, I went to Japan for 3 years. And at the time I was studying at the world's 3rd best international school in the world. So when we left that, it's called the American School in Japan, ASIJ. When we left that, we were going back to Canada. And I was then going to be going into the public school system. My parents were concerned that I would be bored going from such an intense international school to then the public school. So they put me in French immersion. They just put me in French school, and it was like sink or swim. So I was taking history, math, science, art, English literature, for example, all in French.
Wow. Okay.
Without really knowing French when I came into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now then, 2 years later, I was pretty good at French. I was getting my understanding of the language and the material. And then my parents said, okay, we're moving to Kuwait.
To Kuwait. Okay.
Okay, so now we're moving to Kuwait, get picked up, head over to Kuwait. And then, of course, I didn't need French, but I needed Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
I took Arabic as a foreign language for 4 years.
Wow.
While continuing to study French, but again, it was once every week, and I was not speaking French. I was learning the grammar, I was reading and writing sentences, but I wasn't really creating French with my brain.
Right.
Right. I think that's the difference. So then I left Kuwait, went to university, studied at university, got my TESOL certificate, and then moved to Korea. Right. And while I was in Korea, learned Korean. So I've learned Japanese, Arabic, French, Korean, and then now German. And in that, I've kind of realized that if you're not doing all 4 of those connections, then there's always something that's missing. Mm-hmm. Right? So, for example, I now have 2 children who are completely bilingual in English and German. My husband speaks German with them. I speak English. And since we're in Germany, the rest of the world speaks German with them. Mm-hmm. Now, if I don't teach them how to write English, then they'll be able to speak with me and all of that. But if they go back to Canada, for example, for university, they'll really struggle to write in English. There's not a true fluency there. You need all 4 of those connections going in order to truly be fluent in that language.
And what I wanted to ask was especially about you said that, going back to what you're saying about doing the 4 different skills when you're with students, and not giving them homework necessarily if they don't have time for. So do you think that how many hours of English are they getting with those 4 skills without doing anything outside of class?
So we meet for an hour and a half. Typically, pre-COVID, we would meet for an hour and a half every week. And
so it's just 90 minutes a week, and without doing any getting any exposure to English outside of class, that would be enough, those 90 minutes? Or
I'm sure to a certain extent there is some exposure to English outside of the class. I truly believe that there's exposure to English almost everywhere, especially if you go looking for it. It's easy to find no matter where you are. But a lot of my professionals are also people who need English because it is very much a part of their job.
So in most cases, they were getting English outside of class.
Yeah, it's a question of perfecting that, creating a more professional English. Like I'm a business English trainer.
Right.
So most of my people, they had 14 years of English, and 20 years of no English, and now all of a sudden they need English tomorrow for this promotion or this job they're getting.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I truly believe that I'm not the only English experience, but I am the only experience that's making them better necessarily. They could watch a little bit of TV or they could listen to something on the radio, but that's not really pushing them.
And these are small groups or big groups or one-to-one, or depending?
I would say small groups. So my biggest group has 13 people in it.
Okay. And these days, are you doing more online teaching? Are you doing exclusively online teaching? What's
at the moment? Yes. So 2 of my contracts have gone completely online. One of them, just as soon as everything went around with COVID, they just cut and said, we'll let you know when you can come back. Luckily for me at that point, I had already started an online school. So this brings me to about 2 years ago now. Again, same thing. I've been now working with English learners here in Germany for about 8 years. And I realized that no matter where the level was, people were always asking the question, why? They want to know why whatever I just told them or whatever I just corrected was the case. And I think the reason they're asking why is because they want to know for the future when they can use that again.
Okay.
So, for example, like I always like trying to find patterns, right, with English. So, for example, if you suggest something, you can suggest a great book or you can suggest a restaurant. But if you suggest an action with a verb afterward, that verb always has the ing, that gerund, right? So when you've got that, so you suggest eating at this restaurant, you suggest going to this place, you suggest watching this movie. So for me, it's about finding those kind of patterns, and then they know afterwards, okay, every time I use suggest with that verb there afterwards, I know that I can create a sentence that's correct. So we started creating digital courses that were intended towards business English clients. We've now sold our course to numerous companies, including a Fortune 500 company.
Oh, fantastic.
And now, thank you. And now we are, so we're all over the world. We are teaching in India, we're teaching in Finland and here in Germany. And then I've also, because I am also on Instagram, which is where you and I have met, I'm also trying to help other English teachers who've moved online based on COVID, how to start working for themselves. I think a lot of English teachers struggle because as a teacher, you just want to help. You just want to put your information out there. And it's opposite to a business person who then also has to make sales and negotiate things and, and keep their business going. So those two things are almost opposites. And we're trying to help as many teachers as we can to learn those skills that are necessary for their job.
I have lots of questions about that, but I'm going to try to remember to get back to that in a second. So when was the shift to wanting to help teachers and work with teachers? When did that happen?
So if I can even just go back to the beginning of the online presence. So I've been teaching English for 13 years at this point now. I've been teaching English here in Germany for 8 years. My daughter is 6. And about 2 years ago, I realized that my daughter was soon going to be going into school. And up until then, I also have a son, but he's significantly younger. It was a real struggle. If I don't show up to this job, I don't get paid. You know, if my daughter is sick, I don't get paid. If there's an outbreak of lice at the school, I don't get paid. So there was always these reasons why I wasn't able to go into the companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, same thing as I had mentioned earlier, you know, it's always the same question. It's always the same thing, whether it's in a medical facility, in the fashion industry, the photographer I worked with, the 2 sports stars that I worked with, I've worked in companies that make really big industry. So like, for example, they're called straddle carriers. They pick up the big containers and they're bigger. I mean, they could pick up this house if they felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there. And then I also work for a company that makes a really small tool that's made out of diamonds. It's called a diamond encrusted roller. And it's because diamonds are the hardest substance in earth. So we've got big tools, we've got small tools, we've got fashion, we've got medicine, we've got sports, we've got arts, but everyone's asking me the same thing. Why? Right? So what we did was then take all of that knowledge and put it into our digital courses. So then we can help more people at more time. And then because of that, I don't always need to be away from my daughter. Right? If she's sick, I can stay home. And while she's lying in bed, I can write an ebook or I can do something that can be useful towards my career while also being here with my daughter and now my son.
And when you started writing these courses, and you keep saying we, so who's we in terms of creating the courses?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll go through the whole story because I don't want to jump around too much. I recognize that I've been doing that. I don't want to be hard to follow.
No.
So my son is 3 now. When he was around 5-6 months old, I just started posting on Instagram as a way of finding local clients. And in and around when I had around 700 followers, which I was just like blown away that I would have 700 followers. I also realized that none of them were here in Würzburg. All of them wanted English. All of them wanted the same, question, why, or the answer why. But none of them were here in my town. So I asked my very best friend, who I met back in Korea. He's now a stay-at-home dad with his 2 kids while his wife is working internationally for a company. They've been sent out to Switzerland. He can't work there because he doesn't have the certification to continue with his job there as a social worker. So I asked him to come in and basically help me with the stuff that I'm not so good at with it, which is like the technology stuff, the website running, and the administrative stuff there. So the 2 of us have created an online school. We now have we've got 3 teachers working for us. We've got people who are running challenges and running courses, putting them onto our school. And then, so yeah, we started that almost 3 years ago. And then, no, actually, sorry, that is not even true. The Instagram started around 3 years ago. The online school was officially launched about 1.5 years ago. And then in October of this last year, a girlfriend and I, actually, Karis, she's been here before, her and I decided to have a webinar basically to help all of the new teachers out there. It was what we wish we'd known 1 year ago. So when I was launching my online school and when she was starting her Instagram page. And from that day, things kind of snowballed, if you will, because all of a sudden there was all sorts of teachers coming to me saying, I miss community. I miss, having people to ask questions to. I feel like I'm all on my own on this. I'm just putting posts out there and nobody's coming to me. So we ran another webinar. And then, even more people came, and then we ran another webinar. And at that webinar, we then opened up the concept of a teacher's community. And then within that, we're also teaching skills like sales on Instagram, what to post to get clients, how to talk about your offer, how to create your offer, things like that. So even in October of this last year, I guess I'll go a month back. In September of this last year, I had no idea I would be talking to teachers. And then in October, this thing just started and hasn't stopped. And now we're creating things to help teachers expand their business and try and find clients.
And do you enjoy the business coaching side
very much
as much as you enjoy teaching, or is it different, or you like it more? Or
it's very different. It's totally new to me, but I have for the last, I guess, 3 years now been trying to figure out how to make sales and trying to figure out how to talk about this and that. So for me, spending all that time and now helping other teachers is a fantastic use of my time, especially while I'm now home. So we're in Germany. In March of last year, we went into 11 weeks of lockdown. And then I had 2 young children at home with me. My husband also works at home. He has for the last couple of years, but he has a full-time job and needs to be there. So now all of a sudden I've got to fit the job around the family. Both you and I said, okay, this has to happen at 7:00 tonight because that's when my children will be sleeping. So everything basically has been able to fit in and around my need to be there with them while they're so young. My daughter has just turned 6 and my son has just turned 3. So to be able to be home with them while going through lockdowns and sick from school, or right now my daughter goes to school 5 days out of every 10 days. They're doing like a switch on and off thing because of COVID. So those other 5 days I need to be here and I need to be homeschooling my daughter and all of that. So this has provided a really good way for me to do both, to work and be a hands-on parent.
It's great. Good. And as far as I have a bunch of questions about what you're doing with teachers. Maybe the first one I have is, how many of the teachers that you meet, I mean, obviously most of them, if not all of them, recognize that, it's not that easy just to make sales. If, just being a good teacher, there's all the stuff they have to learn. How many of those teachers, recognize that they don't know what to do and they really want to get into it, compared to those that are like, I just want to teach English. I don't want to have to do this. And, why should I have to do this? And they resent doing it. And do you have to work? Tell me a bit about.
So the problem is, traditional teachers go into a school and they don't have to work to get their students. Your students come into the room, they have to work to motivate their students or inspire their students, but they don't have to make sales. They don't have to negotiate their price. They don't have to do all of the things that being an online teacher or a self-employed teacher does. So that's a really big step, going from I was working in a school or I was working for an institution where people just sent me stuff and then paid me things, and that's done. Or even better than that, just handed me a book and told me, teach them this one. Now it's a question of trying to get your own clients, and most of the people that come into our community have been trying to do this for a while and have been struggling.
And did they, I know it's not, you can't generalize for everyone, but they were trying to do it for a while and struggling, and it's because they, really are into this idea, or they feel like if they don't, they're not going to be able to make money, or is it both? I mean, are they passionate about the idea of being independent, or is it more like, this is my only hope of getting what I want? I'd rather not. I'm not really an entrepreneur, but I guess I'm going to have to try to be, or do they really want to be?
I think most people are ready to step into that next kind of mindset shift of like, okay, now I guess I have this next bigger shoe to fill.
So they're motivated to do it.
I think so. I mean, maybe if you start talking to someone the minute they open up in my world, it's like they start an Instagram page and they kind of struggle through it and they're not really sure what to do. So they're just kind of doing a whole bunch of things. And for me, it's about finding the focus in your page. I mean, I'm not sure how many people here are actually interested in having an Instagram page, for example, but you have to have focus in who you're talking to. If your goal is to find 10 million followers, you can find 10 million followers, but absolutely 0 buyers. Right.
And this is something we've talked a lot about recently on this program, actually. So, if the difference between having followers and having paid customers for online courses, the way you're talking about it, though, it sounds like that's an important piece, is the Instagram and the social media.
Well, yeah, I would say social media is probably, especially right now where everything is online anyways, I would say it is a very big piece.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, you can put something out in the newspaper. For sure, you can use word of mouth where you're telling friends. You know, if you live in an area where there's a lot of people that don't speak English, for sure you can find a lot of clients that way. But especially right now where everybody's online, it makes sense to be on social media. Now,
But most of those Instagram followers, as you said, not going to buy the online course. So why is building up the Instagram going to necessarily help those teachers make money?
I think there's twofold. So it's not, I mean, you can't imagine that for every one follower, there will be one buyer. If anything, statistically speaking, it's in and around 1,000 followers means one buyer. However, I think that there's a strategy behind what you can post that helps you get more followers. For example, statistically, my business partner and I aren't even supposed to have launched one course, let alone the 8 that we've done, and also the teachers program that we've done, because statistically we need 1,000 followers to get one buyer. We're at around 800 subscribers in our school.
So it's something else then.
It's very much something else. There should be a strategy behind it. It's not just a numbers game.
But is that something else, something you're doing on Instagram, or is that something else, other things, email lists and other things you're doing online?
We're like really lacking in the email game.
Really? So you really attribute most of it to social media?
Instagram specifically.
Wow. You're the first person I've met who said that. So what's going on that's different?
So I want to say there seems to have been like a couple of waves over time over Instagram. There's some people that started teaching on YouTube, and then those people tend to have Instagram pages, but there's no like, here's your expression, here's your word of the day, here's your phrasal verb, here's, you know, suggesting with the verb and the ing. So those people are, like, in my opinion, they're in their own world. They have absolutely monetized their YouTube page, which is fantastic. There's a lot of skill that goes into putting those videos together, and that's not necessarily something that I have or am looking to go into right now. You've got social media wise, you've got Facebook and Instagram, and then you've got TikTok and Twitter and Clubhouse and this and that and the other thing. And you can be in 9 different places at one time. But I truly believe that Instagram is actually one of the best places to be other than YouTube. And I think when it comes to Instagram, the problem is a lot of people are looking for something free. But if you're trying to talk to everybody, then you're selling to nobody. So it's all about the niche. Now, my niche is actually quite big. Business English specifically is not exactly the smallest of niches. I would say, I mean, the ideal situation would be that if I had any sort of medical training whatsoever, I would be I would create a course for medical English. If I was a lawyer at one point, I would create a course for lawyers English, or for, you know, anything that would get really, really specific into one particular niche.
But you said you had 8 courses and they've been successful. And those are general business English.
Yes.
Courses? So what separates you from other people that have big Instagram followings that maybe aren't getting the same kind of conversions as far as sales?
So I was looking,
if you know what it is. I mean, you're saying statistically you shouldn't be succeeding the way you are. So I'm really curious. For teachers watching,
it's definitely not accidental. It is strategic in that way.
Okay.
Now, one of the biggest things, the Fortune 500 company that we were teaching at, that actually came to us, and it's really funny because I have in and around 30,000 followers on Facebook, on Instagram. In October of last year, someone with around 60,000 followers on Instagram came to me and said, you know, I was running this promotion, got this contract, but it's way too big for me. I don't have anything close to anything that could, you know, they have 200 students and there's no way I can teach all 200 of them all by myself. So he came to me because every time I go live on Instagram, I say I go into companies and I teach them business English and I have big groups of people and this is what I do. So again, you're just kind of reminding people over and over and over again what it is that you offer. Is the first and most important thing, is to have a very clear idea of who you want to serve, and then to almost be, I like to say like pushy about just letting absolutely everybody know who it is that you serve. Because if you don't tell people, they'll never know. So this person comes to me who's significantly bigger in the field, comes to me and offers me this. And when that came to me, we weren't necessarily ready for that contract. We were also in the middle of lockdown. Both myself and my business partner have 2 kids each. So between us, there's 4 children. And he's a stay-at-home dad. I'm a stay-at-home mom. So like, how are we supposed to create this giant project serving 200 international clients while also being here and cooking dinner and lunch and breakfast and washing and being in lockdown, not having any help? So we ended up being able to pull that off. And then from that, we have also then taken that exact same course and served it to other places. That is also strategic. So that's the first side, is that we kind of, I want to say, lucked into him getting this job and passing it to us. But then also our ability and motivation to step into that bigger shoe. Right? That's always what we wanted. Both of us said at numerous points, like, are we ready for that? This is really bad timing, but we have to take it. So there's that. But then there's also, in my opinion, a strategy behind an online presence.
Okay.
So if you're looking for clients, for example, I truly believe that a word of the day post, today's word of the day is mellifluous, and then mellifluous means, and then use it in a sentence, and then that's your post. I truly believe that those kind of lessons are not actually going to get people clients.
That's interesting, because they may get people followers. In fact, we know they can get people a lot of followers. So those would be, maybe the majority of those people would be the ones you're saying are looking for free tips and free stuff. Okay, so what would be different then? So to me, the idea is, showing who you are. Even when I'm with my business clients, my 50, 60-year-old bosses, even when I'm with them, I'm trying to make English fun. English has to be something you enjoy doing, or you're, as a student, or you're never going to learn. So for me, my idea has always been that it has to be something fun. So I don't do, this is your word of the day, but I show how English can improve your life. I show how English can be fun. And I try to make sure that I'm inspiring people. And when I'm doing that, I'm way more likely to get clients online than if I'm like, look at this fancy word I know. Look at this other expression you should know. Stop saying very, say all of these other things. Like, those kind of posts don't actually make people want to learn English. So a lot of the time they're just kind of scrolling and they're like, oh, great, just had my English class done for the day. But if you ask them 2 days later, what was mellifluous, they'd be like, oh, I don't know. So is this a sort of advice that you're giving to the teachers that join your community? And what other advice that you haven't mentioned do you think is most important? So
the first webinar that we have in our first program was about finding your niche. It was a workshop on finding your niche. And I say very, very, very clearly, the more specific you get into your niche, the better. For a couple different reasons. You know who you're talking to, and you know how to talk to them. If I am, like I said earlier, a medical professional and I'm teaching other medical professionals, then I wouldn't want to teach the word mellifluous. I would want to teach doses and taking people off medicine, putting people on medicine, the kind of words that they're going to need for their job. And you can get really specific with every single post that I'm talking to doctors who need English. So you can have 1,000 followers. I always use the expression, like, if I teach the photographers of African art, not the African artists, not the artists of African art, but the photographers of African art. And I have 3 followers because that's the only person I talk to. When I put out a course or an ebook or a program, all 3 of those people are guaranteed to be there. If I'm talking to everyone, today it's mellifluous, tomorrow it's set back, this easy phrasal verb, and then the next day it's a C1 level advanced university English, and then the next day it's intermediate expressions or something like this. When you're talking to everybody, you can get 100,000 followers,
right?
But you probably can't sell to even 1/10 of that, let alone 1,000. See what I'm saying? So there is absolutely a strategy in having a very specific niche. And again, my niche is not that specific, but I'm also learning as I'm now teaching trainers that the more I talk to teachers, all of a sudden, the more students come in, which is kind of funny. So my first advice is to get very specific on your niche. The second one is to kind of think about the strategy of when to post what. So this is another thing that we talked about. So for example, if you're trying to, and this is my favorite example, if you're trying to go vegan and you're like, okay, I'm going to go vegan, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight, I'm going to live healthy forever and zero carbon footprint. So you go through on Instagram and you follow 4 or 5 different vegan people, right? Like, I've started my journey of veganism. Well, then the next day, depending on where I am in my day, if I come across one of those posts, I might completely ignore it, or I might really look. So you can't assume that everyone who looks at your post or who comes across it randomly is in the mental headspace. Maybe I just ate a cheeseburger and I'm not in the mood for looking at vegan stuff. Or maybe I'm out and my friend runs to the restroom, I pull out Instagram, put my phone away, and that's it. I'm not in a place where I'm looking to buy a vegan cookbook, for example. Now, in that same thing, so 2 of those 5 people, these 5 vegan pages that I follow, one of them posts every single day, they post a vegan recipe. I'm like, cool. So now I've got tons of ideas. I can take this recipe. Maybe tomorrow when I have my vegan breakfast, I'll have that. Excellent. The other side is that if it's not just like a vegan recipe page, but someone who talks about how long they've been a vegan, why they became a vegan, 6 months in, they had their first cheeseburger and how they felt after that, like really getting much more specific. Now, both of these people put out a cookbook. Whose cookbook do you think I'm more likely to buy? And I can guarantee you it's the person over here who's talking about their experience and not necessarily the person over here. Person over here, they're like, here's a recipe, here's a rrecipe, here's a recipe. Want a cookbook? No, I don't know anything about it. Versus the person over here, you're like, I love this person. She's been a vegan for 6 years. She had to do it because she had cancer when she was 24. And I know her whole story.
So it's the story.
And then that, for whatever reason, that connects you that much more to this person.
This is definitely something I've heard before. So it's about telling the story, and it's arguably like why social media is going into like stories more.
Right.
And all of this is, people wanting to connect. I mean, it's kind of silly. Like, why wouldn't they want to connect more?
Exactly. They don't just want someone yelling at them, this is the vegan recipe, this is your English expression. They want that connection. And actually that brings me to my next point, because the next point is the strategy of what to post when. So if you think, I had this analogy from somebody who said that every Monday is like a New Year's. So I think they meant for the diet industry, for the healthy food industry, or the working out industry, whatever. But I think it's kind of applies to English as well. People on Sunday night, people are like, okay, this week I'm going to study my English. I'm going to pick up my book. I'm going to do something. So typically when I promote an offer, I'll do that at the beginning of the week, usually between Sunday night and Tuesday morning. I will promote something. If it's an old ebook and I'm just bringing it back in, I'll do it on that time. And then I'll kind of ride that educate people and have fun educating people at the beginning of the week. And then by the end of the week, if I imagine, even if I'm still trying to learn German, I'm still always trying to improve my German. If somebody comes at me with an ebook on how to, 45 great expressions you need in German on a Friday evening, I have zero interest in 45 great expressions for German on a Friday evening. So, in that moment, then instead of trying to sell people something on a Friday evening, Saturday afternoon, Sunday brunch, whatever, I just make posts to connect with people. I ask conversation questions. I tell them about my life. I show them something and ask for some sort of response, and, practice your English with me. Tell me what you were having for lunch today. Tell me this and that. And that to me makes a lot more sense, because that's what I would want if I were looking for something in German or Spanish or Greece or French.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever miss teaching in a classroom, or you're passionate, so passionate about what you're doing now that you don't feel that way?
Yeah. So, I mean, this whole thing was with the teachers was a very big surprise, but I'm so passionate about this and about helping teachers who are because teachers just want to help people. That's why Mohammed has accepted this job for free. You just want to help people, Mohammed, and that's wonderful. I think, there are so many great teachers out there who just only want to improve themselves for their students, it becomes your obsession. I want to read this book, I want to watch this movie, every time you do something in English, it's because you've got your students in mind. So as another example, so a third thing I'm doing, all of a sudden my Instagram page got multi-niched, and I started talking to more teachers. And then it turned out that a lot of people that were already following me are actually English teachers in general. And they're teaching at a school, or they're teaching at a place. They're not necessarily working for themselves, but they were sending me messages saying, like, can I come to this? Because I'm a teacher too. And it's not really like for you. This would bore you. What to post on Instagram is not something that would entertain anyone who doesn't have an Instagram page. However, all of a sudden I was getting more questions from other teachers. So we've also created a English teachers conversation group built specifically for teachers who just want to improve their English. And again, it's always for the students.
Right.
So I feel like teachers are focused on always educating themselves, always improving themselves for the sole purpose of passing that information on. And I think there's something so wonderful about that. That is 100% what a teacher is. So now for me to be then helping those kind of people either just improve their English to help their students at a school, or improve their business skills in order to help themselves further. It really has become the dream that I never realized I had.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And who knew when I started this Instagram page 2.5 years ago, it never occurred to me that I would be teaching teachers in this way.
That's great. And that teachers group is where? Or
they're both basically run, or they're both. So if you want to come and find me, you can see me at, I can put in my Instagram page. So it's English Anywhere. Oops, I spelled anywhere wrong. Anywhere.de_Kate. And then, so we have the two offers for teachers. We've got the one that's made specifically for teachers who work for themselves, and then the ESL conversation group. You can find links to both at my online school, as well as, I'm sure, all over my Instagram page.
Great. And well, I was going to ask, where can people find you? So that is the best place for them, either Instagram or on your website. Cool. And just last question I had, is there anything now that you, like you said, you didn't plan on doing what you're doing now, do you think that might happen again? Like, in this journey, you could change directions, or do you feel like this is, do you have anything in mind different from what you're doing? Or
I think that's kind of the magic of the internet, is that there's so many opportunities. When you go to school to become a teacher, you just kind of have one idea in your head. And now the internet has provided a different way. We can have teachers that are running podcasts, or who are killing it on Instagram, or who do courses or programs, or, challenges, speaking clubs, like all of you just have so many different opportunities. So I think for everyone, not necessarily like do whatever you want whenever you want. There has to be some strategy behind it. However, if I were to decide tomorrow, you know what, I just really want to open a reading club, or I want to have a book club, or I want to do this, I think that's the magic of the internet, is that you actually can do that.
That's right.
I can't see, now that we've gone this far into the teaching teachers, I can't see it that we would ever just go back and be like, okay, we're done teaching teachers, have a wonderful life. But I don't think I'll ever quit teaching altogether either. I love both.
Yeah, I don't imagine you will.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something that I'm really enjoying. And I guess at some point, if I decided to make an English, learn English with a cookbook or whatever that might be, or go vegan with my English vegan cookbook, something, I'm not vegan, but maybe one day I will be, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of cool thing, is that I have no idea. In 5 years, I have no idea what.
Yeah, there are no boundaries, no limits. Yeah.
Our life goal was to get our course into a company. It never occurred to me it would be a Fortune 500 company. It never occurred to me it would be a Fortune 500 company first.
That's amazing.
Fortune 500 company with 200 students.
Yeah.
So, and then all of a sudden I'm hiring 8 people because we have to teach 200 people.
Right. No, that's really wonderful. Well, congratulations and good luck with everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
It was really great to have you here, and we will, as I said, we'll share the video, and we usually get comments around the video, so you can always look for those and answer questions, or if you see questions out there.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Kate. It was really nice, and it's really great to see somebody that's done so many things as an English teacher, and then now working with teachers to help them and share your experience. And it sounds like the insight you're providing is very valuable for them. So
I hope so.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. You wouldn't be doing so well if it weren't. So yeah,
that's true. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for everyone who came here live. Thanks to all of you watching the recording at wherever you are, whatever time this is. Kate, it was great to have you as our featured teacher, and hope to work with you again in some way. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.